Evelyn was 35 when her world crumbled like dry bread in trembling hands. For 7 years, she had built her life around marriage, faithfully loving, cooking, praying, and hoping. She and her husband, Daniel, had dreamed of children, shared laughter about baby names, and whispered stories of the future into the quiet corners of their modest home. But reality was cruel. They tried everything: fertility pills, prayers, consultations. Friends suggested herbalists. Some whispered about curses. Evelyn carried the burden silently, believing love would see them through. But one morning, her entire world shrank to a sheet of paper. On the kitchen table, between an empty tea mug and an uneaten slice of bread, lay a folded note. "I can't do this anymore. I'm sorry. Daniel." That was it. No confrontation. No goodbye. No attempt at working things out. Just a plain, cruel exit. Evelyn stared at the note until the letters blurred. She waited for the pain to hit like a wave. But it didn't. It crept in slowly, like the morning chill that finds every crack in the wall. She read the note again, and again, but the message never changed. She sat there for hours, unmoving. The only sound was the ticking clock and the soft hum of a world that had moved on without her. She called no one. She told no one. She didn't cry, not yet. For the first time in her life, Evelyn was truly alone. The days that followed were a blur of silence. Friends tried to call. She ignored them. Her sister came knocking. She pretended not to be home. The shame was unbearable. In a culture where a woman's worth is tied to her womb, Evelyn felt like a discarded wrapper, used, empty, and tossed aside. She stopped going to church. She stopped cooking. She stopped speaking to God. At night, she cried into her pillow until it soaked through. "What did I do wrong?" she asked the ceiling. Wasn't love enough? Weeks turned into months. Eventually, she returned to the world, but she was not the same. She took up a volunteer position at a child welfare center. Not because she had healed, but because she needed something to keep her from drowning. At the center, she helped serve food, organize play sessions, and teach children to read. Most of the children were orphans or abandoned. Evelyn didn't ask too many questions, but she noticed the way some of them flinched at loud noises, how some hoarded biscuits in their pockets, and how others clung to her like she was all they had. Then one Thursday, 5 boys walked in, escorted by a tired-looking social worker. Brothers. The eldest barely 10, the youngest no more than 5. All with hollow eyes and mismatched clothes. Their parents died in a fire, the social worker explained. Relatives don't want to take them in. 5 boys at once is overwhelming. The word stung. Overwhelming. The boys sat silently, holding each other. Evelyn couldn't look away. That night, she couldn't sleep. Their faces haunted her. Their silence mirrored hers. And their rejection. It was the same wound she had carried since Daniel left. She thought about how badly she had wanted to be a mother. And here, dropped at her feet by fate, was a chance. Not the fairy tale kind, but something real. Something raw. The next morning, she called the center. "What happens to those boys if no one takes them?" "They go into the system," the woman replied. Evelyn took a deep breath. "What if I take them?" There was silence on the other end. Then, all of them? Yes, all of them. Paperwork, interviews, home visits. It took weeks, but Evelyn was determined. One by one, they came home. First came Marcus, the oldest, wary and protective. Then Darian, quiet, observant, and deeply thoughtful. Tyrell and Taj, twins with infectious laughter and endless energy. And lastly, little Noel, timid, with eyes too big for his tiny face. Her house changed overnight. Noise, laughter, smashed plates, soggy socks, sleepless nights. And yet, Evelyn felt alive again. She didn't have a lot of money, or a partner, or even a plan, but she had love. A big, bruised, ready-to-heal kind of love. The woman once abandoned and labeled childless had just become a mother of 5. And this was only the beginning. Evelyn's house transformed into organized chaos. Gone were the quiet, hollow mornings. Now the sun rose to the thump of running feet, cereal being spilled, and the occasional twin argument over who got the bigger slice of yam. It was messy, loud, exhausting, and beautiful. The neighbors whispered at first. Some warned her. Others pitied her. A few openly mocked her decision. But Evelyn had long stopped living for the approval of others. Those boys needed her, and she needed them just as much. She converted her sitting room into a makeshift study area. The dining table became the command center for homework. Posters of multiplication tables, English words, and moral instructions filled the walls. Every child got a chore. Every child had a bedtime story. Evelyn created structure, not because she wanted control, but because love needed roots to grow. But it wasn't easy. There were days she broke down. Days when Noelle's nightmares woke the entire house. When Tyrell pushed a neighbor's child in frustration. When Taj refused to eat because it reminded him of their old home. Evelyn wasn't a superhero. She cried. She questioned. But she never gave up. To afford their needs, she started baking meat pies and chin-chin in the evenings and selling them at the nearby bus stop before dawn. It wasn't much, but it paid for pencils and bread. She met kind people too. A teacher offered to tutor the boys at no cost. A church group donated used clothes. Her old friend Miriam dropped by with a bag of rice and stayed to help clean. Slowly, each boy started to bloom. Marcus, always watchful, became her assistant. He helped with errands, watched the younger ones, and made sure everyone got their share of food. Darian fell in love with books. He devoured every storybook they could borrow from the library and started writing poems in a small notebook. The twins, Tyrell and Taj, channeled their energy into drawing. They decorated the house with crayon art and even won a community art contest. And Noelle, sweet Noelle, who once didn't speak for days, began to hum tunes. Evelyn found him making music with spoons, cups, and anything he could tap. She saved to buy him a tiny keyboard. Teenage years came with their own storms. Voices cracked. Rules were tested. Phones were hidden under pillows. But through every slammed door and emotional outburst, Evelyn remained firm, fair, and faithful. She reminded them daily, "You are loved. You are safe. And you are mine." That love became the foundation for everything that came after. One night, as she sat at the edge of her bed massaging her swollen feet, Marcus walked in. He was taller now, stronger, quiet as always. "Mama Eve," he said, using the name they all had started calling her. "Thank you for choosing us." She smiled through tears. "No, Marcus. Thank you for letting me." In a house built on brokenness, something unshakable had taken root. Not blood, not wealth, but love. Love was the fire. Love was the foundation. And Evelyn was building a home that could not be shaken. Time, like a river, moved on, quiet and steady at first, then rushing before she could blink. The boys grew, and so did Evelyn's love for them. Each day brought its challenges, but it also brought transformation. They were no longer the scared, silent children who clutched each other in that welfare center. They were becoming young men. Marcus had turned 16 and was preparing for senior school exams. He spent long hours in the backyard, head buried in textbooks, with Darian helping him revise. Evelyn watched them from the kitchen window, her heart swelling with pride. She saw in Marcus a leader, a protector, the kind of man Daniel never became. Darian became the family's unofficial secretary. He organized schedules, made grocery lists, and even started a small blog on his second-hand phone. His posts, often about gratitude, drew attention from readers across town. Evelyn encouraged him, bought him a used laptop with her savings, and watched him come alive. The twins, Tyrell and Taj, were still mischief makers, but now with direction. They had turned their love for art into a small hustle, designing custom sneakers and t-shirts for local kids. They painted on weekends, leaving smudges of joy on everything they touched. And Noel, sweet, once timid Noel, was now confident and musical. He joined the church choir and became the youngest soloist in the group. Evelyn sometimes cried in the pews, listening to his voice echo through the sanctuary. She had bought him a used keyboard from a struggling music teacher who wanted Noel to have it more than he wanted the money. The house grew tighter as they all matured. Bedrooms once shared now needed space. Evelyn converted the old store into a reading nook and made partitions using curtains for privacy. They didn't have much, but they never lacked love. Then came the news that changed everything. One day, Marcus received an envelope stamped with the seal of the National Scholarship Board. Evelyn opened it with trembling hands. He had been awarded a full scholarship to study engineering at a prestigious university in the capital city. Tears flowed. They danced in the living room that night. Marcus, always so composed, lifted Evelyn off her feet and spun her around. "We made it, Mama Eve," he whispered. Darian's blog was next to explode. One of his posts titled "Raised Without Blood, Loved Without Limits" went viral. A popular motivational speaker shared it. Offers came in, internships, writing gigs, even a book collaboration. Tyrell and Taj were invited to showcase their designs at a youth creativity fair. They won second place and landed a deal with a small local boutique. And Noel, just 11, was offered a spot at a music academy. His choir director made the arrangements, and the community rallied around to support the fees. Evelyn stood at the center of it all, watching her boys rise. But with success came fear. She feared they would forget her, outgrow her, or drift away into their new worlds. She shared her worry one night with Marcus during a rare moment alone. "Don't ever think we'll leave you behind," he said, taking her hand. "You're not just our mother, Mama Eve. You're our anchor." Still, the house grew quieter as opportunities took the boys farther from home. Letters replaced laughter. Phone calls replaced bedtime stories. The walls echoed differently, but Evelyn never stopped praying. She prayed for strength, for safety, for their hearts to stay kind and rooted. One morning, she awoke to find a note on her pillow, handwritten in Darian's cursive. "Mama Eve, we're building something for you. Don't worry. We haven't gone far. Love, your boys." She didn't understand at first. Weeks turned into months. The house, now half empty, felt too large. Evelyn filled her time volunteering again, this time mentoring younger women on parenting and resilience. And then, on her 60th birthday, everything changed again. She awoke to the sound of singing. All 5 boys were home. They had prepared breakfast. The aroma of fried plantain and spicy eggs filled the air. Darian handed her a blindfold and said, "You trusted us with your life. Now trust us with this surprise." With laughter and curiosity, she allowed herself to be guided. When they removed the blindfold, she gasped. There, in front of her, was a sparkling white key tied with a red ribbon. Behind it, parked across the gate, was a decorated van covered in printed photographs of a brand new house. Wide windows, white walls, a garden of blooming roses. Marcus stepped forward. "We built it for you," he said. "It's yours. Your palace." Her knees buckled. They caught her, all 5 of them. Evelyn wept. Not from sadness, but from gratitude. In that moment, she knew love had never been wasted. She didn't give them blood, but she had given them everything else. And now they were giving back. Her legacy was rising, brick by brick, dream by dream. The woman once abandoned was now celebrated. Not for her womb, but for her heart. For Evelyn, the winds of change were no longer storms. They were wings, and she was flying at last. The drive to the new house felt like a dream. Evelyn sat in the front seat, flanked by her sons in the van, her fingers still wrapped around the silver key. The house wasn't far, just on the other side of town, but it felt like she was being driven into another lifetime. Every bump on the road stirred a memory. Marcus's first fever, Darian's scraped knees, the twins painting on walls, Noelle's first solo in church. Each turn reminded her of a sacrifice, each mile a prayer answered. When they arrived, she stepped out slowly, her eyes wide. The house was even more beautiful in person. White-walled two-story, with wide windows that let in the light. A wraparound porch with wooden chairs, a lush garden blooming with lilies and her favorite hibiscus. There was a small fountain in the center of the lawn, trickling gently, like the soft heartbeat of a dream fulfilled. She didn't say a word. She simply walked to the door, inserted the key, and stepped into her new beginning. The living room was wide and warm, painted in soft gold and cream. There were family photos already hanging on the walls. A picture of her and the boys from years ago at the beach. One of Marcus holding his scholarship letter. A candid of Darian grinning over his blog milestone. Even Noelle at the keyboard with his choir. The kitchen gleamed. The bedrooms were cozy, each filled with thoughtful touches. Her favorite books, an armchair by the window, scented candles. The boys gave her a tour, taking turns holding her hand. When they reached the backyard, she found a small wooden swing hung between two trees. "We built that for your quiet evenings," Taj said. "And that," Tyrell added, pointing to a tiny glass greenhouse, "is where you can grow your herbs again." Evelyn was overwhelmed. Gratitude made her silent. Later that evening, they all gathered on the porch, sharing laughter, bowls of jollof rice, and roasted chicken. It felt like home. Darian pulled out a guitar. Noelle joined in with soft vocals. Even the twins hummed along. When the sun dipped below the horizon, Marcus stood up with another wrapped gift. "This," he said, handing her a folder, "is not just a gift. It's security." Inside was a trust fund document, signed and sealed. The boys had pooled their earnings, from internships, freelance work, the fashion line, music gigs, and created a long-term financial plan for her. Enough for her to live comfortably, afford medical care, and even run a small business if she wished. Tears streamed down her face. She had spent decades giving without expectation, and now her children, her boys, had returned it all tenfold. "I don't know what to say," she whispered. "You don't have to," Marcus replied. "Just know we remember everything." Later that night, she lay on her new bed, staring at the ceiling. For the first time in years, her heart didn't ache. It was full. Weeks passed and Evelyn settled into her new home. The community welcomed her warmly. Children came around often, friends of her grandkids, local kids who knew her name. She started a small garden, revived her baking, and even began teaching women in the neighborhood how to make snacks for income. Then came more good news. A year after the wedding, all 5 of her daughters-in-law gave birth, one after the other, month by month. Marcus's wife had twin girls, whom he named Eva and Lynn. "They're not just names," he told her. "They're your legacy." Evelyn wept as she cradled them, her hands trembling. In 12 months, she went from having no biological children to becoming a grandmother of 6. The house filled again with baby cries, bottle clinks, lullabies, and soft coos. It became the meeting point for all her children and grandchildren. Sundays turned into feasts. Birthdays became family festivals. Everyone called her Mama Eve, even the neighbors. But one afternoon, while returning from Noelle's house, something happened that would stir the echoes of her past. A crowd had gathered near a corner. A small boy, no more than 7, lay unconscious in the dust, still in his school uniform. His sister, barely 9, stood beside him crying. "He was hungry," she sobbed. He collapsed. Without hesitation, Evelyn rushed the boy to the hospital. He didn't make it. She cried that night, not just for him, but for every child who had ever gone unnoticed. At 5 a.m., a decision formed in her mind. She opened the family WhatsApp group and typed, "I want to open a free restaurant on our street. For children like that boy. Monday to Friday. No child should be too hungry to live." The responses came fast and emotional. "We're in. Anything you need, Mama Eve." That same month, the planning began. The next chapter of Evelyn's legacy had just begun. And this time it would feed the world. The opening day of the restaurant was like a festival. Children poured in from every direction, dusty feet, rumbling bellies, and bright eyes filled with wonder. The banner above the entrance read in bold, cheerful letters, "Mummy's King's Free Kitchen." Below it, in smaller letters, it read, "No child eats hungry." Evelyn stood by the doorway wearing an apron embroidered with the restaurant's name. Her son stood behind her, smiling proudly. Each of them had contributed something. Darian handled branding and social media. Marcus oversaw the construction. The twins painted colorful murals on the walls, and Noel composed the jingle that played from a small speaker outside. The building itself wasn't large, but it was warm, bright, inviting. There were wooden tables and benches, hand-woven curtains, and shelves with picture books for children to read while they ate. The aroma of jollof rice, beans, yam porridge, and freshly baked bread filled the air. The kitchen team was a group of women from the neighborhood who Evelyn had trained herself. Some were widows, others single mothers, each of them now earning and empowered. The restaurant opened every weekday afternoon, serving freshly prepared meals to underprivileged school children. By the second week, lines stretched down the block. Children who had once roamed aimlessly after school now had somewhere to go. Somewhere safe. Somewhere filled with love. One teacher from the local primary school visited the restaurant and said, "We've seen a difference already. Attendance is up. Participation is better. Hunger was stealing their future, but you've given it back." Evelyn cried that night. Not from sadness, but from purpose. From knowing she was exactly where she needed to be. Word of the restaurant spread fast. A journalist covered the story, and it went viral. Social media platforms were flooded with pictures of happy children and bowls of steaming food. People shared Evelyn's story, of heartbreak, healing, and hope. Messages poured in. "Thank you for inspiring me. I want to volunteer. Where can I donate?" Soon, trucks filled with donations began arriving. Bags of rice, cartons of milk, packs of spaghetti. Even a bakery offered to deliver bread daily. One family sent a new generator. Another donated uniforms for the kitchen staff. The community began to change. Local business owners dropped by weekly to help serve food. Teenagers offered to help with cleaning and tutoring the children after meals. Retired teachers came in the evenings to teach math and reading. The restaurant became more than a place for food. It became a center of hope. Then came Christmas. All 5 sons returned with their wives and children. The house was packed, noisy, and filled with love. They cooked together, played games, and laughed deep into the night. On Christmas morning, they hosted a grand meal at the restaurant for the entire neighborhood. Everyone was welcome, old, young, rich, poor. Gifts were handed out. Songs were sung. Children danced. That was when Evelyn saw him. Standing at the back of the line, thinner than she remembered, face older and eyes tired. Daniel, the man who had once left her with nothing but a note. He shuffled forward slowly, clearly trying not to be noticed. Evelyn froze. Her hand clutched the serving spoon tighter. She stared. Was it really him? His shirt was faded. Shoes worn out. He looked defeated. Evelyn's heart pounded. Memories flashed. The kitchen table. The empty bedroom. The note. She took a deep breath, walked from behind the counter, and made her way to him. "Daniel," she said. He turned, startled. Their eyes met. Time stopped. Neither spoke. And then Evelyn whispered, "You look hungry." He nodded. She handed him a plate. "Sit. Eat." And without another word, she walked away. That night, she didn't speak of it to anyone. She lay awake thinking, praying, remembering. By morning, she knew what she had to do. She called Marcus and Darian into the sitting room. "I need to speak to him," she said. Not as the man who left me, but as a soul who lost his way. They didn't argue. Later that day, they found Daniel again, sleeping behind a mechanic shop nearby. He was working as a cleaner, living in a tiny back room. When he saw Evelyn, he stood slowly. I'm not here for apologies, she said. I'm here for closure. Daniel lowered his eyes. I was ashamed. I failed you. You didn't fail me, she replied. You failed yourself. But you still deserve dignity. With her son's help, they found him a room near the restaurant. Gave him clean clothes. Offered him part-time work. Not out of obligation, but out of grace. Because Evelyn had discovered something long ago. Love doesn't keep score. Love feeds. Love builds. Love forgives. And once more, Evelyn chose to love. Daniel stayed quiet for weeks. He came early to help at the restaurant, cleaned tables, carried heavy bags of rice, and sometimes even played games with the children. He said little, ate little, and slept in the small room Evelyn had arranged behind the restaurant. But every time he walked by Evelyn, there was something in his eyes. Shame, yes, but something else too. A deep yearning. A man weighed down by years of regret. Evelyn didn't pressure him. She simply watched. She gave him space to show who he had become. And gradually, Daniel began to talk. One afternoon, as they sat outside sorting beans together, he broke the silence. I read about you, he said. Long before I knew it was you. That article. The woman who raised kings. Evelyn kept working. She didn't respond, but her shoulders softened. I didn't think you'd ever forgive me. I didn't forgive you for your sake, she said, eyes still on the beans. I forgave you for mine. Daniel looked away. I've never known peace since the day I left. You walked away from love, she replied. But love doesn't hold grudges. It just moves forward. From that day on, something shifted. Daniel started smiling. He took initiative. He became part of the rhythm of the restaurant. He was still quiet, still carried his sorrow like a shadow, but he began to heal. One day, he even danced with a group of children during a music break. The laughter that escaped him was genuine. Meanwhile, Evelyn's grandchildren continued to multiply her joy. Eva and Lynn, the twin girls, were inseparable. Noelle's daughter had started singing. Darian's son was already asking to learn how to type. The house was full on weekends again. But this time, Evelyn wasn't the only one with stories. The grandchildren had their own tales, of school, of dreams, of friends. Evelyn listened, encouraged, and cherished every moment. One evening, the entire family gathered under the stars in the backyard. The twins had set up a projector. Noel brought his guitar. A makeshift cinema. Children laughed. The men roasted corn and suya. The women gossiped and teased. And then Darian stood and called for attention. Evelyn turned 61, surrounded by music, food, and the noisy joy of her grandchildren. Her small palace overflowed with life, sticky fingers, crayons on walls, and toy cars under the dining table. It wasn't perfect. It was better. She began a new routine. Every Sunday she hosted lunch. Her sons never missed it, nor did their wives. Nor did Daniel, who now worked full-time managing volunteers at the restaurant. It was a full-circle miracle she hadn't asked for, but had embraced with grace. That year, each of her 5 sons celebrated their anniversaries, and something unexpected happened. All 5 couples announced they were expecting again. Another wave of grandchildren on the way. Evelyn laughed until tears ran down her cheeks. Am I starting a tribe? She joked. Better call me Chief Mama Eve. The children and neighbors did. Her story had spread beyond the town. She had been invited to speak at women's conferences. University students wrote papers about her. A documentary crew began visiting weekly to capture her life. But Evelyn never let it get to her head. I'm just a mother, she told everyone. A mother who chose to love. One morning, she received a letter from a publishing house. They wanted to write her biography. She smiled and replied, "Only if the proceeds go to feeding more children." That same month, her restaurant received funding from an international nonprofit. They expanded into a second location, closer to a slum community where children often scavenged through rubbish heaps. On the day it opened, Evelyn wore a white dress and blue headwrap. She stood on the makeshift stage and looked over the sea of small faces. "I once cried because I had no child," she began. "Now I mother hundreds." Cheers erupted. As the sun set, Daniel stood beside her. "I was a fool to leave you," he said quietly. She touched his hand gently. "Yes, but love taught you how to return." Weeks later, Evelyn received a national honor, the Woman of Courage Award, for her role in transforming child welfare and family rehabilitation. The president himself presented it. Photos filled the newspapers. Evelyn in royal blue, holding the plaque, standing tall. Yet, for all the fame, her favorite title remained Mama. And then came the final surprise. On a breezy Sunday, Marcus gathered everyone in the garden. "We've been talking," he said, "and we agree, there's one thing left to do." He turned to Evelyn. "We want to establish a foundation in your name, the Evelyn Hope Foundation, to provide meals, shelter, and scholarships to underprivileged children and widowed mothers across Nigeria." Tears spilled. "You've done enough," she whispered. "No," Darian said. "You showed us the way. Now it's our turn to carry the torch." Tyrell added, "You didn't just feed us. You raised us into kings." Noelle stepped forward with a framed motto: love, feed, raise, repeat. That night, Evelyn sat on her veranda, a warm blanket around her shoulders, watching the stars. Daniel brought her tea. "You've changed the world," he said. She shook her head slowly. "I just chose to care." The wind rustled the trees. Children's laughter rang from the distance. Evelyn closed her eyes and smiled. She had not birthed royalty, but she had raised kings. And her legacy, built not with wealth or titles, but with meals served, tears wiped, stories told, and lives lifted, would live forever. The queen of quiet strength. The mother of many. The woman who raised kings. "We have a surprise," he announced. From the house, Marcus and Daniel emerged. Daniel held a small wooden plaque. His hands trembled as he walked to Evelyn. "This is long overdue," he said. "But I hope it's not too late." He handed her the plaque. It read, "To Evelyn Adebayo, the mother of kings. For your unending sacrifice, boundless love, and the courage to forgive what others would have buried." Everyone clapped. Tears welled in Evelyn's eyes. "I'm not perfect," she whispered. "You didn't have to be," Marcus said. "You just had to love. And you did it more than anyone ever could." That night, Daniel asked for a chair beside her. "May I?" Evelyn nodded. They sat together, the weight of years between them, but no bitterness. Just quiet understanding. "I don't want anything," he said. "I just want to serve. As long as I have breath." Evelyn looked up at the stars. "Then serve well." And he did. Over the next few months, Daniel became a trusted part of the community. He organized volunteers, managed deliveries, even started counseling young boys who had grown up without fathers. One boy asked him once, "Sir, did you ever have a family?" Daniel looked across the compound to Evelyn playing with her grandkids. "I did," he said, smiling. "And by grace, I still do." Evelyn often marveled at how life had circled back. The man who once abandoned her now stood beside her, not as a husband, but as a witness to the miracle she had become. And though the wound had once bled deep, it had become a scar. A quiet reminder that even broken stories can be mended. Forgiveness had not erased the past, but it had rewritten the ending.